Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. If everyone could please rise for the flag salute. I
I
pledge
pledge
allegiance
Pledge
allegiance
allegiance to
to
the
the
flag
flag of
of
the
the
United
United
States of
States
America
of America
and
and
to
to
the
the
and to the
republic
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 for
for
which
which
it
it
stands,
stands,
and
one
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 nation,
nation,
nation
under
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 God,
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 indivisible,
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 with
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 liberty
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 and
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 justice
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 for
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 all.
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 Thank you. Route of egress. In the event of an emergency, all people may exit right or left from the room and proceed to an exit door. All doors will open from the inside. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Haledon Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published in the North Jersey Herald News, the board's official newspaper, on January 12, 2020, and August 14, 2020. Notices of this meeting, indicating date, time, and place, were posted publicly on the door of the main entrance to the school and filed with the clerk in the municipality of Haledon. Roll call, please.
1 second. Miss Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Here.
Mrs. Isa,
Here,
Mr. Jacquez, Mr. Martinez,
Here.
Mr. Moxo, Mrs. Perez,
Here.
Mr. Ramadan,
Here.
and Mr. Guzman.
Here. Do we have a motion to accept correspondence?
So moved. So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ramadan, second by Mrs. Diaz. And roll call.
Miss Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Do we have a motion to approve prior minutes?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Mr. Ramadan. Roll call, please.
Miss Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes, and I abstain on the August 27th meeting.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Do we have a motion to open up the public portion to hear citizens on agenda items only?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Moved by Ms. Diaz, second by Mrs. Perez, and roll call.
Miss Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education on agenda items only. Mr. Pagani, do you have anything? I have nothing on my end.
Nothing has come through the chat, Mr. Guzman.
Okay. Anyone wishing to address the Board of Education on the agenda items only may use the chat option. Do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Ms. Diaz. Roll call, please.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. I have a very short report tonight. I just want to wish our school community, which includes our staff members, our children, a safe and prosperous school year. I see we're off to a good start. I know we're going to have some hiccups, especially as it pertains to internal technology, but I know the administration has been working hand in hand with parents, making sure they have proper internet connection and assisting them with their Chromebook setup, with Google Meet, so on and so forth. So we will get there. At this time, I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Walker.
Thank you, President Guzman. Today was a historic day at Haledon Public. Today we successfully reopened the building with a hybridized style of education and saw over 150 students attend HPS in person. All things considered, today was successful. However, we did experience some legitimate challenges. I want to review our first day of school so that the board gets a clear picture as to the day's highlights as well as the challenges we plan to overcome. The most positive aspect is that every single person, staff, and students tested within normal temperature ranges. We did not have any student or staff member enter the isolated area or need to be retested for temperature checks. The transition into the building actually went pretty well. We were able to get almost all of the students in within 15 minutes. The standing temperature checks worked well for the older kids. For the younger kids, we saw that the machines were a bit confusing and many thought they were picture machines, so they waived them. So we ended up just doing manual temperature checks for our little guys. Usually on the first day of school, parents tend to linger a little bit longer or try to walk their kids directly into the classroom. All parents today were very understanding of the need not to linger and not to be able to walk their child into the building. We did experience a technical issue that I want to talk to you about. The issue was not the fault of our IT team, nor was it the fault of our teachers. This was instead a result of human error on part of the administrative team. Someone had accidentally clicked a wrong button without understanding the implications of what would happen if we clicked that button. This caused our Google Meet system to have to be repopulated, and this process, as we've learned, can take up to 12 hours. This made it so that many of the morning classes, our remote attendance numbers were quite sparse. As the day went along and the system repopulated more and more, we found the numbers of students attending remote was vastly increased. In our older grades, we had many classes that had as many as 90% to 100% of remote students attending via Google Meets by the late morning and early afternoon. That is something we would never have expected to have happen in March or April. In our lower grades, the numbers were a little bit less, but we expect that this is the result of the time it takes this system to repopulate it. All things considered, this was the best bad technical problem to have. This problem was not caused by our devices, which would have been a very difficult problem to fix. It was not caused because of our software. It was not caused because of our bandwidth. And it was not caused because of the actual platform itself. This was the problem that we have the most control to fix. And we expect by tomorrow morning, it should be 100% fixed. This week, we're trying to keep things as simple as possible. We will not have outdoor recess. We want to fully assess the strengths and weaknesses of our new operation for the first 4 days, and then we will make a determination as to whether to move forward and allow some sort of recess. It did feel very good to have kids back in the building where they belong. The students who attended were thrilled to be back. I saw smiles in almost every classroom. One student even told me it was the best day of his life. Overall, despite the technical obstacles we experienced, I think today was a success. I really do. We apologize to the students that were not able to log in or had trouble logging in, and we will be reaching out to them tomorrow to make sure they have our full attention should problems persist. Nonetheless, I think today was a really strong day. I want to thank the parents that trusted us with their kids and the staff that worked extremely hard to make sure that each child's first day of school was as special as it could possibly be. Our staff did a wonderful job, and I'm very proud to be working with this type of stalwart level of professionalism. My second item is that everyone at HPS, at every level, worked incredibly hard just to be able to get to the point of reopening. I cannot understate this enough. Just getting to the point we got today was extremely challenging and was only possible because we have an amazing custodial staff, an amazing health staff, an amazing secretarial staff, an amazing teaching staff, and an administrative team that worked hard to overcome many, many obstacles. I want to thank everyone here today for making this possible. Third item, I rarely will give personalized shout outs at a board meeting, but I want to make this board aware of the efforts of one particular staff member. Miss Hannah Wantula is currently in her third year at Haledon Public School. She's worked hard and always wanted to teach the second grade. She had been given this opportunity and had set up her classroom all summer and had even written personalized letters to each of her students and the parents, highlighting the great things that she would do in her classes. Due to scheduling complications we faced because of the various staff members requesting leaves and remote-only instruction, we were forced to be in the position where we had to move her from second grade to fifth grade with just a few days before the start of the school year. We hated having to do this with her on such short notice, but I want to thank her for her professionalism. And I want her to know that her willingness to help our school operation will not be forgotten. Thank you again, Ms. Wantula. My fourth item, I was honored to serve as a guest panelist on a radio, internet, and live stream show called Community Manners 2.0 this weekend. This is a bi-weekly show that focuses on educational matters and the impact these issues have on the community. This topic of particular episode was school restart, and the conversation that I took part in was deeply engaging. Sadly, for item 5, despite our best efforts, we simply were not able to procure enough Chromebooks to be able to supply our pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade students with devices. We had placed an order for the additional Chromebooks in May, and we'd expected them to be delivered this summer. Now we're told that the shipment is not expected until sometime in October. We'd inquired as to whether older students would prefer using their personal devices that they owned, and we were hoping we could then use these Chromebooks to supply our younger students with the Chromebooks. Simply put, despite our strong generosity of many of our students, we did not have enough students that had their own personal devices for use. Mr. Torito has set up a packet distribution system, and we will also be placing copies of our packets on our website so parents may print them if they wish. When we are able to get all of our Chromebooks, we will then look to offer live streaming to our younger grades in a similar fashion that we're currently offering it to our other students. We know there are parents that were very sad to hear this. I totally understand how they feel, and I'm also very disappointed. We have strong information to indicate the cause of this delay stems from sanctions against Chinese companies, trade war retaliation, and other issues that I had never expected would hinder our school's ability to procure equipment. I know that some parents are of the mindset that if their children have their own devices at home, wouldn't it be possible for us to allow live streaming for them? I understand why they would feel this way, and if I was a parent, I would probably ask the very same question. The issue is about equity more than anything else. We can't offer a higher level of service to students based on whether or not they have a device. Right now, we just don't have enough devices to give to as many people as will need them. So we're in the position whereby we need to continue with packet distribution for grades pre-K, K, and 1 until we can obtain the devices we need. Two other notes I have is there's one policy amendment that I put in. I spoke of this last week, and that's that um, we had originally put in last week, there was a 5-day window to transfer from remote only into hybrid. We want to keep things as constantly as possible. So in all my Zoom meetings and all my other communication, we told parents that until October 8th or October 9th, that's going to be the next window. This policy is going to give us 20 days to aptly prepare for the students who wish to switch. And hopefully, if everything goes as good as we think it will go, more people will want to take advantage of this. And now, lastly, I want to transition to Mr. Torito, who's going to walk us through the aftercare proposal for HPS.
Good evening, everyone. So in front of me, I have the aftercare restart guidance. This is the guidance that was set forth by the Department of Children and Families and the Office of Licensing which governs our aftercare program. You know, it's not governed by New Jersey Department of Education. This document outlines COVID-19 public health recommendations for childcare settings. Reopening childcare requires everyone to move forward together by practicing social distancing, wearing face coverings, and performing everyday preventive actions to reduce the spread of respiratory illness. So basically, I'm just going to take you through what our reopening plan will look like. The first section has a summary of requirements, which we're going to skip for now, only because the next section, starting on page 3, is a more detailed, has more detailed sections of those requirements. So we're going to start with screening and admittance. This is typically the guidance that they set forth is typically for centers that bring the children in directly from outside. Because our children are brought in the morning, they're obviously screened then, so we do not need to re-screen them once they enter aftercare. They will be, what we are going to look to do and add to this guidance, if you look in the HPS aftercare plan, to include staff members. Once the kids come into aftercare, staff members will conduct a visual inspection of the students for signs of illness, which could include flushed cheeks, rapid breathing, or difficulty breathing without recent physical activity, fatigue, or extreme fussiness. If any students exhibit any of those signs, they'll be brought immediately to the supervising staff member, who will conduct a temperature screening and determine further action as necessary. That could include sending the child home and, you know, going further to contact the Department of Health. This is one of the biggest changes, is our group sizes and social distancing. Generally in our aftercare program, we have, could be 30 to 40 kids in any single group. Usually our first and second grades are quite big. This year, their proposal is that all groups must be limited to only 10 students. So this is going to be a big change for us. There will be 2 staff members to every group of 10 children. This means also that in each group, we're going to have to kind of section them off into classrooms rather than having them stay in the small gym or the big gym or the cafeteria. So now all the groups will have to remain in classrooms for most of the time in aftercare. We see that students may only attend on their designated days that they're physically in the building according to their hybrid AB schedule. We're looking to start out with using 6 classrooms, which would limit our capacity to start at 60 children per day. As we move forward through the certain phases Mr. Walker talked about in October, reassessing this plan. Hopefully at that point, everything's running smoothly and we can expand our capacity. If we go to section 3 for activities, obviously activities are going to be very limited. Basically, the students will not be allowed to share any materials. There's obviously no person-to-person contact like hugging, wrestling, or games involving touching or tagging. Students will be able to participate in activities seated at their desks in the classrooms. They may use their devices at their leisure, but sharing of supplies will obviously be prohibited. We are going to look to have the students do something outdoors, eventually, possibly just something like walks that are socially distanced, but it would be limited to one group at a time. As far as visitors, obviously, visitors are going to be strictly prohibited from coming into the program other than emergency personnel. If we go to healthy hygiene practices, we'll have to reinforce use of face coverings for all children and for all staff. All designated classrooms will have adequate supplies to support healthy hygiene behaviors. Children and staff members will be encouraged to practice frequent hand washing. Hand washing will be encouraged upon entry into the classroom, using the toilet after coughing, sneezing, using a handkerchief or disposable tissue after eating or drinking, after being outdoors, after handling equipment, utensils and supplies, and after engaging in other activities that contaminate the hands. Staff and students will be encouraged to have an additional set of clothing should an accident happen.
Mr. Torito, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I believe fully that we're going to be able to keep this sanitary, especially with your leadership. Can you touch upon what the cost difference will be now that the staff, the student to staff member size is essentially 1 to 5 or 2 to 10?
All right. So this is obviously going to be an increased cost. As I said, we usually had about 30 students in the program per group, and we had to have 2 staff members at that time. So now you're looking at a student-staff ratio going from 15 to 1 down now to 10 to 1, or 10 to 2 actually. So with that, you know, you're increasing your costs, but you're reducing your revenue from not bringing enough kids in. I mean, in the past we've had around 200 students in the program. Now we're going to be limited to about 60 students in the program. Also, like you said, with the sanitizing and hygiene, I know you talked about having an additional custodian help out. I mean, as soon as school dismisses, we're going to bring these kids into the big gym, the cafeteria, the small gym for a short time period while all those classrooms are completely sanitized before the kids are able to go in there. Once the kids leave, when aftercare finishes at 6, the custodians will have to go in again and do another deep cleaning and sanitization.
So what is going to be the increased cost based on all these factors?
So the increased cost, the proposal is that we increase the cost not by a monthly fee, but now we break it down since the kids are coming on a hybrid schedule weekly. My proposal is that we charge a weekly fee of $65 per week for each student. That will be from school dismissal until 6 p.m. each night. I think the breakdown is about $5 an hour.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So so essentially, how much are parents paying for aftercare prior to COVID?
Prior to COVID, there was a monthly fee of $110, and that was
Correct.
5 days per week. All right. As I said, that was based on about 200 students in the program. Now we're reducing it down to 60.
No, I understand that we're taking pretty much a hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So now instead of so now we're gonna ask parents to pay $65 a week, and I understand because we gotta kind of try to make this work for everyone, right?
Right.
But can I make the clarification? They only can come in twice. They can only be 2 weeks out of the month, right? Because it's the week that they're here. So if they're A, they can come in those 2 weeks, and if they're B, they can come those. So it would only be 130 a month as opposed to 110.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And I figure I also want to factor in what's easiest for the parents. I figure a breakdown of paying weekly 65 rather than a monthly fee of 130, whereas the kids aren't coming 2 weeks out of the month, basically.
Is it the same fee if they go 3 times a week versus 5 days a week?
No, there's a reduced fee for 3 days a week, which would be 80. Sorry, 1 second. That would be $45 a week for 3 days a week.
Now, Mr. Walker, we've looked at all of this in terms of this is the only option we have is increasing the
Well,
how much the parents will be paying for it.
so that's not the only option. The other option would be to we could either have the rate stay flat, and if this board still wants this program, then the board would incur whatever the remaining, whatever the loss would be. The second option would be to do some kind of split, like if we did this plan, Mr. Torito, do you expect that this program will run at even, or do you expect that this program might still lose money?
I expect, even with the increase, that we will slightly lose money.
Where are we at with our reserves for aftercare?
Well, that we'd have to wait. We're waiting on our audit to get where our final numbers are at. We do have somewhat of a reserve there. I don't know if it would be enough to cover if we went back to the same model of $100 or 120 per month for each student, though.
And how many years? When was the last time there was a price increase, Jeff?
The last time that we increased the price, according to my records, I think was 2014, where it went from $99 to $110.
So we've had 6 years with the same price.
That's correct. And I will say, the state average right now for an aftercare program, 5 days a week, is $293 a month.
And we have I mean, it's very good, and I understand if we have to increase the cost of it. My only concern is when we're doing that, which is, a time where many families are struggling. So, and I guess that, George, what were you trying to ask? Like, have we exhausted every possibility to see if there is any kind of grant out there, even, I don't know, foresees anything like that?
Well, I guess
Yep.
if they qualify for 4Cs and they qualify for 4Cs, and we accept
Say
that.
that again. I couldn't hear you, George.
I believe Mr. Guzman said that if they qualify for 4Cs, Jeff, can you kind of elaborate a little bit briefly about what the 4Cs program is and how that might affect this?
So the 4Cs program is a subsidy program from the state. Basically, if a parent qualifies with their income, then they would pay either a drastically reduced rate or nothing at all for the program.
And what percentage of our traditional population for aftercare might qualify for that?
It's right around 30%.
So for 30%, it'd be a very minimal increase, and for the rest, it'd be almost a double increase.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the loss real quick. How much? I mean, is it too early to project how much of a loss are we talking here?
Well, you're like I said. I mean, what was the estimate that you had, Jeff, as the number of students that would be going?
60
60 per week, right?
per week.
So I mean, you're talking, something along at least $6,000 a month, because you have 60 times,
Oh, wow.
probably a little bit more than that, because the rate had increased. Like I said, yeah, it is a significant amount of money, which is, and like I said, we're not looking to make a profit off of this. I mean, we
Right.
rarely do. We rarely look to make a profit off it, and I got to commend Mr. Torito, because since he's taken over a number of years back, we were actually operating in the red there for a little while. But yeah, like I said, unfortunately, because of the staffing requirements, we're almost doubling up on staff, which is why we're increasing costs as much as we are, and we're sort of eating some of the cleaning costs and extra custodial time within the regular hours of operation of the budget, trying to kind of limit like we said, limit the increase here. But that being said, it is an increase. I mean, if you're looking at it, it's an increased number of staff that we're looking at, and we're also not expecting as many students to be there. We're cutting that down significantly from the numbers that we normally see. So, again, if like Mr. Walker said, it can be something that we run it as a loss, and then you basically have to take the money out of the regular operating budget. Our feeling was that we're concerned about other expenses throughout the budget, what else could potentially come down the road. So we didn't want to put this into the board that we were going to have something that had a $60,000 or $70,000 loss associated with it.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
we understand.
And that's my concern, like taking money from there. So I completely understand what you guys are saying and increasing the cost of it. I just would like to see if there is what's out there to see how we can help the families. But I do understand that if the cost has to go up, and I understand that is an extra service that we're offering to the community, that is not that we don't have to do it. However, there is a need out there, and the program has been very successful in the past. Um, but I get it. I understand.
One quick question, Mr. Trito, just to make
Mhm.
sure I'm fully aware. Is that the 2 staff per 10 students, is that a mandate or a recommendation, or how is that?
That is a mandate at this point.
Okay.
Mm.
Mr. Torito, if we get more students, if we're able to expand the program in October and November, and as the year goes on, will the costs for parents decrease as we expand the number of students?
That is certainly what I think the goal should be. Is as we are able to bring more kids in, expand the numbers from the 60, up to 100, up to 150, and get back to eventually where we were at one point. Is that we would be able to drop the costs.
Okay, thanks.
But then we will
Another.
have to get more staff.
Well, I believe staffing should be, we're strong there, right, Jeff?
Yes, yeah, we are at about 22 staff members right now. So even with this plan, we may have to rotate the staff basically through so that a maximum of 14 are working a day, so that we're not overstaffing, and have unnecessary staff there and unneeded cost.
So if we went forward with this plan, and then if everything goes the way that we hope, and we're all doing the right things in the class with washing hands and using masks, um, if we're able to, in phase 2, bring in, double the amount of kids, then it's very possible that next board meeting, when we look to do that we also look to, adjust this cost.
That's correct, yes.
Can we do something like this? How about instead of going from 110 to essentially 130, go maybe the 120 mark and just keep it there? You know, instead of like going back and forth, maybe just do the increase to 120, and leave it there, or maybe, I just want to bring that to the table. You get what I'm saying, Mr. Torito, Mr. Walker?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally understand. Rather than having to go back and forth and keep changing the numbers,
Yeah.
possibly operate at a slightly larger loss in the beginning, but hopefully recoup that later on.
Correct. I don't know. That's just, I'm gonna lean on the administration on for that, but I just wanted to just bring it on the table.
It's From my standpoint, I think it's a program we want to have, and I think that, you know, we had every single kid at school today where I didn't get one kid that told me I didn't have one problem with a kid not wearing a mask today. So I think it's a really good sign. I'm hopeful that if we got to the point where we can get to phase B, at a good pace, then we could, make that adjustment. And I think, as to kind of what John alluded, it looks like in a month or two we should have a better idea as to what the actual reserves are for the aftercare, and perhaps that might influence our decision once we get that information.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a big decision, I feel, because anytime there's an increase, especially during a time like this, but I, like Angelique said, and we're just trying to do our due diligence. That's all. So do we want to go with the 130 or the 120, or what do we want to do?
if it's only for, a month we're looking to do this, and it's only about 50 or 60 kids, that $10, we're probably not going to, right, John? Is it really going to be
Well,
noticeable
I
that much?
mean, either way, like I said, if you want to do the 120, I think then we would have to adjust some of the other numbers, correct, Jeff? Because some of the other numbers were based off of that 130 number.
Right, right. So each fee basically is broken down because we have a daily fee. We have a fee for if there's a 12:30 dismissal, a fee for if a kid is only there till 3:30. So we would just have to, tweak those accordingly.
I just want to put everything on the table, like I said, and then we'll take a final recommendation from the administration, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, are we going to do that tonight? Because we do have it on the agenda, because we were looking to start this coming Monday.
Okay.
Because again, so I think, we would probably have to make.
Is this the proper time to discuss this with the board?
Well, George, you could approve it for the 135, and we could just internally charge 120 for, for the time being.
I just want to know the appropriate time to discuss this with the rest of the board, and then we can, I guess, when it comes up.
Well,
for
it's,
a vote.
yeah, it's under finance, under 13,
Okay.
so that would be
All right.
the time that
George.
it could be just.
Angelise, go ahead.
Okay, I don't see why not. It cannot be approved today. I mean, there is a need out there, and I think that the sooner we try to work on this.
Yeah, no, I'm saying I think we should definitely need to approve it today. I'm saying we'd have to just adjust the numbers, which we can do as part of the resolution.
Yeah,
so
my concern is not approved. We're definitely gonna seek to approve it tonight. I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the numbers. That's all.
Gotcha.
Mr. Torito, thank you very much. Mr. Walker, you too.
Thank you.
Moving on to our business administrator, Mr. John Serapiglia.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to give you an update on some of the resolutions on the agenda tonight. We did have an addendum, and the addendum is for additional resolutions that were placed on after our offices had reached out to you to let you know about that basically that the initial agenda was posted. Mr. Walker already touched on one of them, which was a policy in regards to the reopening plan. We also put a resolution on for posting videos online. As you'll recall, we have been recording our Board of Education meetings. Somebody had actually asked me for a copy of it, and I was going to direct them to our website, but I realized that we weren't posting the videos online. A lot of school districts do this. I believe that the intent of us recording the meetings was to eventually put it online. So that's why I have it on the agenda for approval tonight under community engagement. And the third addendum item, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is in regards to our corrective action plan. The resolutions that I have on under finance speak about participating in some co-ops. This participation is allowing us to purchase some needed supplies that we needed for our reopening plan. We're also looking at approving real-time, which is our student information system for the 2020-21 school year. We're looking to approve a contract with Omni. Omni is the company that administers our 403B retirement plan for our staff. So that's the main resolutions I want to talk about. Now I kind of want to go over the addendum, the corrective action plan for our audit. As you will recall, at the last Board of Education meeting, I handed out, or I gave out as a part of correspondence, a letter we received from the state of New Jersey. In January of 2020, before all the craziness of COVID occurred, our school district was reviewed. We were monitored. Ironically, this is the third monitoring I think we've gone through in the last 3 years. But we were monitored in regards to our IDEA and ESSA, which is our Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV programs. As part of that monitoring, a review was given to the Board of Education, an audit with a collaborative monitoring report, and in that report had detailed findings and recommendations. The good news is that all of these findings didn't have a fine or a dollar amount associated with it. Basically, they went through our operations for how we do our Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV funding, because it's not simply just setting up the budgets, it's also certain meetings that we need to have, um, certain documentation that is required. And what they found was areas that we needed to improve upon. So if I could go through it quickly, I'll go through the findings and also the corrective action plan that was put together by our staff. I apologize for getting out so late. We got the corrective action plan completed, Friday afternoon, and I reviewed it this morning, and that's why it got out so late. So under Title I, our first finding was that the Haledon Public Schools must designate a staff person to serve as the district's foster care liaison and post this information on the district's website. So the way that we're going to implement that is at an upcoming board meeting, we are going to board approve a foster care liaison person and post them on our district website. Finding number 2, all required grant funded documents be made available to parents and families and translated into language that are understandable to the parents of those served students. We will be putting together documentation in English and in Spanish. Translation to other languages will be available for posted documents via Google Translate. In addition, for each Title I parent and family engagement activity, the district will maintain on file an agenda, sign-in sheets, and minutes from meeting activity. Finding number 3, the district will include parents and families in the development of the required school parent compact. This is going to relate back to the meetings that are going to be occurring with the Title I parents and families. The action plan is for the meetings with the parents. They're going to discuss the compact, including the parameters of it, what's expected of the parents, what's expected of our staff, development and improve that compact, which we anticipate doing during the 2020-21 school year. And lastly, there was a 4th finding for Title I. The school must convene the annual Title I parent meeting for the parents and families of participating students no later than mid-October 2020. We are planning on having that meeting date the first Wednesday in October and having it annually as the first Wednesday in October, so that our Title I coordinator will be setting that meeting date, sending out a flyer for invitations, putting together an agenda, putting in a sign-in sheet, and keeping a record of those meeting minutes. Under Title IIA, the first finding was in regards to reimbursement, which actually falls under my jurisdiction. And there was an issue wasn't an issue with reimbursement. The problem with it was that we didn't have an approved application into the state, or that section of the application wasn't approved, and because that section was not approved, we weren't able to seek reimbursement. It actually took us a couple of weeks to get that approval done, actually a couple of months, because it was with the review being done in January, that we still hadn't submitted any reimbursements. But now that we've sort of set everything up, we will be we normally do make reimbursement requests on a monthly basis. Finding number 2, district must provide a list of meeting dates and an agenda of stakeholder meeting dates for the remainder of this school year and plan dates for the 2020-21 school year. And this is in consultation throughout the year with stakeholders to improve the local activities in order to meet the purpose of Title II Part A. So our action plan is to set up a list of meeting dates, put together agendas for each of those meetings, and at the end, have somebody recording those meetings. And this will be done by our title director, Ms. Beth Barnhill. Finding number 3, district must create an annual district professional development plan that aligns with New Jersey's definition of professional development and New Jersey standards for professional learning. This is going to be done by Mr. Waka. He's going to be creating the PDP, having it approved by the board, and being revised as necessary. Didn't have any comments under Title III. However, we did have a couple of findings under Title IV. The district must establish and maintain effective internal control over the federal award that provides reasonable assurance that the district is managing the federal award in compliance with federal statutes, regulations, and terms. These internal controls should comply with guidance and standards for internal control in the federal government. Basically, we again weren't submitting reimbursements on a monthly basis, and again, we weren't able to because of the fact that we hadn't had our revised ESSA application approved. We've taken steps to correct that issue, and reimbursement requests have since been made monthly. Finding number 2, in regards to Title IV, the district must create a comprehensive needs assessment in collaboration with all stakeholders. Again, this is going to be a needs assessment plan that is going to be created by our title director, Ms. Beth Barnhill. The last finding under Title IV was the district must provide a list of meeting dates and agenda of stakeholder meeting dates for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year, as well as plan dates for the 2020-21 school year. If any meetings have taken place by the time of the follow-up visit, sign-in sheets must be provided. So again, this is going to be done by the title director, Ms. Beth Barnhill. She'll be putting together a list of meeting dates for 2020, 2021, as well as creating agendas for each meeting and taking minutes of those meetings. She's planning on having 4 meeting dates, as well as topics to be discussed at each meeting and out to the stakeholders by October 1st, 2020. So those were the corrective action plans that need to be done as part of our ESSA funding. Does anybody have any questions in regards to that?
I do.
Yes.
So, okay, under Title 1, the liaison, the foster, what do you say, foster parent liaison?
Foster care
Foster
liaison?
care, yeah.
Foster care liaison, okay. So is this someone that we're going to hire?
No, it's basically somebody on staff that
Okay.
will basically serve as the foster care liaison. Similar to when we have a organizational meeting where we appoint mostly like myself and Mr. Waka to several liaison type positions, it's going to be something similar to that.
So when we talk about family and community engagement, and we talk about those meetings, I mean, what kind of meetings are we talking about? The agenda are those meetings? Are we going to
So if I could just
recruit
jump in.
parents? Yeah.
So what, in this particular case, what helps us is we are a school-wide title school in that
Right.
it's not our school income is such that any program that or any meeting that we run that would talk about reducing the achievement gap or raising test scores, or for Title II professional development, or Title III is ELLs, or Title IV is wellness and and making healthy lifestyle choices. Anything we do with parents that touches upon those would be quantifiable. It's just we just have to now when we're putting together this form, make sure that we list all the things that we've done, because I think that was a big part of what got flagged is we've done a lot of stuff, but we haven't actually identified all the things we have done.
And now, are we doing the parents' activity through the PTA still, or we are just doing like, are we going to reach out to the parents? I remember that the school used to do a lot of activities and workshops to the parents. Are we doing something like that, or this is just based on what we?
So
Actually, I was going to suggest, if it's possible, I don't know if those meetings have to be separate,
Yes,
but
they
since
should.
we already have the PTA meetings scheduled for the 3rd Wednesday of every month, if you wanted to take a part of the PTA meeting to have these Title I parent meetings, you know, if that were to work out logistically, we could.
I can't see why it wouldn't work out. I think it'd be great. And I think one of the new normals that's kind of come out of this is I think our school benefits. I've had these Zoom meetings with parents a lot this summer. I've probably had about 12 Zoom meetings each hour long, and some of them in Spanish, and the turnout was very, very high. And you can't talk about restart without talking about some of these issues that they're combined with it. So I think we're going to have ample opportunities, and I really want to continue this, what we're talking about with this these Zoom meetings. And once we get through restart, I want to talk about the Zoom meetings about what we want our district PD goals to be. Because I know there's certain ones that we're going to want to have, but I'm interested to see what the community thinks as well. But I think your idea of touching upon this during PTA meetings is a no-brainer. It's a great idea.
Yeah, I agree with
And
that. I mean, because I think it's, I don't know, it's not as enticing, I think, when we say, oh, we're having a Title I meeting. Most people don't grasp what that means. But if we
yeah,
make it a part of an existing meeting, even if we technically have to have it as two separate meetings, but it's, in the same time, in the same place, even in the same Zoom session, just basically saying, this is our Title I meeting for right now, and this is the certain items that we're going to be discussing. We'll at least get the participation
yeah,
higher than
yeah,
it would normally be.
yeah.
So
You
thank
have
you.
a captive audience, so
Yes, that
that's
exactly.
And
good.
And we lost points too, like the one year, because we had the meetings, I had the agenda, but no one thought to get parents to sign in. So like little things like that
Mhm,
were really easy fixes moving forward. And I think if we do it
mhm,
electronically, then the just a screenshot of the
mhm,
audience,
mhm,
that's something right
mhm,
there. So I think these are very easy things to do. Plus, we have our school improvement committee and our district advisory committee. I know
mhm.
Ms. Gonzalez used to serve as the board representative for the SKIP and the DIAC. So I'm going to be reaching out to at least one board member very soon, asking if you could help out with that. But I think these are all easy fixes.
yeah. Quick question. Do we have is that going to be established, like a list of topics that are going to be discussed with the parents during these meetings?
Well, it'll be like if it's a Title One meeting, like I think the topic starts with what is Title One and why is it important to you, and how much of our budget do we get for this, and here's what we can do. But the needs assessment is like, here's what our data is showing us that we as a school are saying we might want to use this money to address these particular needs. But it's also getting the needs from the community and saying what needs do you see. So a lot of it's going to be sharing data and kind of looking to see what comes out of that as far as where we want to use the funding we get, because we get maybe about $380,000 soup to nuts if you look at all four titles. Most of it through
Mhm.
Title One, but Title Two is usually a decent chunk of change, and Title Three is usually about a couple thousand, and Title Four we use to supplement our DARE programs and the PBSIS and things like that. So these, I think it'd be really easy to structure meetings around. So if we had 4 PTA meetings, one part could just be Title One. The next time we meet could be now talking about Title Two, in
No, I
addition to
get that.
yeah.
I get that, Mr. Waka. My question is regarding the content of what we're going to deliver to the parents under Title One. What
Mhm.
are we doing? Are we providing any kind of education? That's my question. It's are we what are we going to do this year? Just because we're talking about that, so I just would like to know, like, if we're going to do anything, bring in educating the parents. I don't know
I
what.
think that's what we'd have to plan. Yeah,
Okay,
how do we want to explain what Title One is and what we do with it and what we could do with it? Yeah.
Yeah, well,
got it.
like I said, in the corrective action plan that again was put together by the title director, she did indicate that there would be agendas created for each of the meetings. So we'll just have to make sure that that's, done
Okay,
as part of
got it. Got it.
for the
Thank you.
2021 school year.
I think Angelise is what she's looking for is not just the parents to educate them on what Title One is, or rather to take that time to find a topic to educate the parents on as well. Is that
Yeah.
correct, Angelise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What are their what are their interests? What they want to know? What they want to be educated about, or what are the needs that the parents have that relate to their children's academic achievement?
Okay, very good. Mr. BA, does that conclude your report?
No, there's some other stuff because
Okay,
that
very good.
just touched on the ESSA. There was also 3 findings in regard to the IDEA program, which is the second part of the corrective action plan. The findings seem to be more in regards to the writing of the IEPs than anything else. Finding number one, the district did not consistently document the IEPs of students removed from the general education setting for more than 20% of the school day, including students placed in separate settings, consideration of placement in the least restrictive environment. Specifically, IEPs did not consistently include supplementary aids and services considered, and an explanation of why they are not appropriate, comparison of the benefits provided in regular class and the benefits provided in the special education class, potentially beneficial or harmful effects which a placement general education may have on the student with disabilities or the other students in the class, as well as for those students placed in separate settings, activities to transition the students to a less restrictive environment. The corrective action when determining the educational placement of classified students, the child study team and IEP team will consider the rationale for removal from a general education classroom. All decisions regarding placement are documented in the IEP for each student removed from general education setting for more than 20% of the school day. CST members will be trained to ensure the missing components in this area are considered, documented, and exist in the students' IEPs. Additionally, for students who are found to have non-compliant IEPs in this area, the CST will hold another annual IEP meeting to correct these students' IEPs. The implementation will include training of the child study team, agenda and minutes of those training sessions, revisions of the IEPs identified as non-compliant, and the director of special services will collect random samples of IEPs and review them to ensure the appropriate documentation of rationale for removal from general education of those students. The second finding, the district did not consistently conduct all required sections of the functional assessment as a component of initial evaluations for students referred for speech language services. So our child study team director has an action plan that will include conducting initial evaluations for students referred for speech language services. Her method of implementation will include scheduled training for our district speech pathologists and speech therapists, creating agendas and minutes for those training sessions, revising templates used for functional assessments, and again, another random review of speech language functional assessments. And the third finding under IDEA was in regards, again, I think to speech. The district did not consistently conduct multidisciplinary initial evaluation for students referred for speech language services by obtaining an educational impact statement from the classroom teacher. So for the finding, the corrective action plan will include conducting multidisciplinary initial evaluations for students referred for speech language services, statements from the general education teacher detailing the impact of the speech problem on the student's progress in the general education setting. And that will be included, it must be included in those evaluations. Training for the speech language pathologist therapist will be conducted. So again, there will be training done of the speech pathologist. That's training will include agenda and minutes, and the director of special services will conduct a random review of evaluations. There was also one administrative finding in regards to equipment tags. Equipment purchased with federal funds did not have visible permanently attached numbered inventory tags indicating the federal funding source. We do tag all of our equipment. However, we do tag it with just an asset inventory number. The federal government requires us to also tag those equipment to basically state that the equipment was purchased with IDEA or ESSA funding. We are going to be purchasing additional asset tags with this language on there and place it on all equipment going forward that is purchased with IDEA and ESSA funds. So that was, again, the essence of the evaluation of the audit that was conducted by the state, as well as the district's corrective action plan. Did anybody have any questions in regards to the IDEA portion of it?
I just want to know, so that audit was based on last year?
On the 1920 school. Well, it was based.
That's good, yeah, 2019, 2020?
Yes. And the review covered July 1st, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. I think the intent was to make the corrections in the 1920 school year. Obviously, with the COVID outbreak, because if you could see, we didn't get this. They didn't mail it. Well, they didn't write it up till June 26th. We didn't actually get it to the, I want to say, the mid-August, which is why we approved it so late. But like I said, it was a review, not a gotcha. We're going to try to get you,
I know.
to
I
refund
just
us. It
don't
was more.
remember having all those things with the IDEA before.
Um,
Like
I
this
don't
is a
I don't know
lot.
if we've ever. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if we were reviewed for the IDEA before
Okay.
by the state of New Jersey.
All right, because I don't remember that.
We,
No, we
like I
have
said,
not.
the review last time was well, the state's come out now 3 times for an OFAX reviews. This review was of IDA and ESSA. The review before was of our ASSA and our what was it, extraordinary aid applications. And the review that was done a couple of years ago was only of our, I believe, our Title One. And like I said, and these reviews are good because they do, since the review the last time, we have, implemented a lot of the corrective action, or we have implemented all the corrective action plans. And I know because every year I have these reminders pop up in my calendar to do something that related back. So going
Right.
forward, that's why these are good. These audits are good. And the intent is to have, now this becomes part of mine, Mr. Walker's, Mrs. Barnhill's, and Mrs. Martinez's plan that, we make sure that in July and August that they are setting up the meetings, that, we require them to send us the agendas. We're going to make sure by, as part of either the organizational meeting or in July or August, make sure that they're going to appoint a foster care liaison. So like I said, all of this gets incorporated, at least on my end. I know I put it all into my calendar to make sure it gets in there. But you're right. Like I said, this, and like I said, the IDA stuff mostly applied to, look like the IEP writing rather than anything we had done in regards to the applications. So.
Yep. I see that. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. That's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, stand by. Personnel management, Ms. Diaz.
Agenda items, and there are 2 items in the addendum, but they're already included in the virtual agenda.
Okay. Finance and physical plant, Mr. Ramadan.
Agenda items only.
Curriculum and technology, Mrs. Isa.
Agenda items only.
Policy, Mrs. Perez.
Just the revised policy.
Security and safety, Mrs. Fisher.
Nothing at this time.
Community engagement.
We have 1 item.
State and county, Ms. Diaz. State, rather.
I don't have anything to report.
County, Mrs. Fisher.
Nothing right now.
Anything from our board attorney?
I don't
No.
believe so.
Okay, very good. Do we have a motion to accept the appointments on the agenda?
Move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And roll call, please.
I'm sorry, who was the first movement?
Ms. Diaz, second by Mrs. Isa.
All right, Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher, Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. All right, moving on to personnel.
I'm going to move items 8.1 through 8.18, and that includes the 2 items in the addendum.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. I do have a question on for Mr. Walker. For the hybrid scheduling additional hours.
Yes, so that was for the people that didn't respond and didn't indicate if they were hybrid or if they were going to be remote. We decided in order to get the best possible data for this board so that they could make the best possible decision based on whether to reopen hybrid or reopen remote only. I had asked the guidance counselors to personally call each person that didn't get back to us, which was about 400 or 500 different phone calls. And then the other big part of that was once we determined who was going to do what, then we had to rebalance the class sizes because we didn't want to have one third grade class have like 8 kids and another third grade class have 1. And when you rebalance the class sizes, that means you have to move students from one place to another, which means you have to change your schedules. And the tech end, you also have to change their computer login. So it was a lot more time consuming. But in order to get you guys the best data, that's what we did.
Understood. Roll call, please.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Curriculum.
I'd like to move agenda items 9.1 and 9.2.
Second.
And roll call.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Policy.
I'd like to move agenda item 10.1.
Second.
And roll call.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Abstain.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Community engagement.
I'm going to move item. Hold on, guys. 12.1.
Second.
And roll call.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Finance.
Moving items 13.1 to 13.8.
Second.
Okay. 13.4 is the aftercare services.
Yes.
So we are going for 65 hours a week, regardless of the days that are used. We're not looking to make any profit. These are just simply to cover the costs that we need to get this program off the ground.
George, I'm going to make sure I heard you correctly. 60 or 65?
65. The only issue I have is I want to make sure we're doing our due diligence here, because remember, one week with the hybrid model, 1 week the kids are in school, the next week they're home, and that week they're home, the parents are already going to pay for someone to probably be home with their children. So it's
Yeah.
it's a big
So-
bump. Now $65 a week Wouldn't it be easier if they pay the? I mean, I don't know. We can we reword that. I mean, it's not technically $65 a week, is it? It's $65 while the kids are in, while their children are in school. I don't know.
Jeff, do you want anything you want to chime in, Jeff, about that? Hold on, we gotta unmute you. Can we unmute Mr. Trito?
So I think the reason that we changed it to per week instead of per month is so that there are times in the school calendar when the kids are, um, you know, not going a full month. That, if you look at December, they're off a full week for the Christmas break. If you look at November, there's 2 weeks there where we have the NJEA convention and and Thanksgiving. So the parents then wouldn't have to pay, $130, let's say, for the entire month, rather than just paying a broken down fee for that week of 2 days, which would be prorated.
Um, $65 a week.
Look, this board could, you know, if this board wants to keep things as is, and then if we're able to expand in October, like we expect we should be able to do, we could probably bear the burden for 1 month and keep things as is. But if we're not able to expand, then I think it's got to be expected at the next board meeting or the next time we talk about this that the price raise is going to have to happen.
Understood. Any other board members want to weigh in on this?
How it's Mr. Walker, you feel that it wouldn't be too much of a burden for the school to carry it for the month until
I
October 9th?
and I'll welcome John to correct me, but I believe that we could probably carry it till October 9th. But if we do carry to October 9th and the situation does not change and and we're still going to only be able to not get to phase two, then I think it's almost it has to be at that next board meeting that this plan has to move forward with, because we can't bleed.
Yeah.
I don't think. But John, would you agree with that, John?
I do. Like I said, the only thing I sort of worry about is going out with multiple numbers to the parents. You know, you it's if you're going with the $110 model, you're going to get people are going to pay for September. Is that what you're suggesting? And then
What I'm worried about
they're going to also pay then for October.
What I'm worried about is if we change to, reflect Mr. Trito's pros, which is a very good proposal, and then we go to the hybrid phase B, and now there's another price thing we're telling parents. We're saying, oh yeah, by the way, now because we're in phase B, you get $8 back a day or something. I feel like we're just gonna be throwing the next couple months a lot of different numbers out there, which if we have to do it, then we do it. But it may be easier to just say we got to phase B. It only took us a month. Well, we can bleed a little bit in October out of this, but if we get to October and we're not able to get to the point where we feel comfortable saying, let's go from 170 up to 340, then I think we have to, at that point, if we want to keep aftercare, say that 65 number a week has got to be what we got to go with in order to keep the program alive. But if we're able to get to that phase B, then we could almost skip a step, and then Jeff comes back next time we meet for this and says, here is the phase B pricing, and we just move forward with that.
I mean, if we can spare parents having to spend the extra money during this difficult time, I think it's it would be good. It would be a good thing, and we reassess in a month.
I agree, Liesl.
Jeff, would that be something you think we could do in a month, and we could look at this once we kind of know where we're at as far as if we're going to be able to get the phase B or not?
Yeah. So just so I'm clear, though, so we would want to keep it then for now at the 110 a month, which is currently the approved price.
I think that's what the suggestion would be. I think I'd rather not keep every if we do it the other way, it's going to be every meeting we kind of have to vote on a new price, which is going to kind of get really confusing for the parents. And I'd rather just, when we do a price change, we kind of do it where it's, because I feel like once we get to phase B, we're probably going to be there for a little while, because we know the governor is going to say certain kids, if you don't want to come back, you're probably not going to have to come back this year. So the phase B price will probably be a sticking price that lasts for more than 2 or 3 or 4 months.
So we're not increasing anything?
If this board is okay with it, then I think that we should probably remove this agenda item, or just, table it for now, and then we'll see where we're at next month.
Okay, my only concern is that if there is a need out there, that's my only concern, because if the parents can't handle it for a month, so maybe they're not going to need it. And then if we prolong this, less children, we're going to have less children.
It's possible. So if we keep it as is and the parents still struggle to pay the traditional low price that we have, then we have a different problem on our hands. But I think that if we can get to phase B in October and we could double the amount of kids that come to school, that makes Jeff's price different.
Sounds good.
But then it also needs to be conveyed to the parents that even though they're paying for a month, they're only eligible to go when their students are in school, because the last thing I want Jeff to be faced with is, not only having, running it at a loss, but the loss would be significantly more money, and the potential of a health issue would be, more pronounced. So we need to make sure that it's conveyed that the $110 is only going to be now covering 2 weeks.
I think you're right, because that's a very good point, because we would get parents bringing that up, but I think that's where I would recommend the board hold firm on.
I agree with that.
I also recommend, even though it seems obvious, I think we should be explicit about explaining that it's only for hybrid students, because you may have parents who work during the day and then they think, oh, I can drop my kids off, at aftercare. So this option is only for students who are here doing the hybrid schedule, and we should be clear about that.
Absolutely.
All right, so Jeff, I'm just going to go off of what's on the website. If we want to approve it, the amendment would be to amend it to $110 per month, regardless of the days used. We'd still keep only allowed for week your child is physically in the school. It would be $85 per month for 3 days, $10 for emergency drop-ins, $1, $10, fine. Daily emergent care would be back down to $10 from 2:45 to dismissal. Daily emergent care for 12:30 dismissal, which would be $15 per day, and daily emergent care for a full day would be $20.
That's correct.
Yeah, we'll reevaluate it in a month.
So, Ms. Diaz and Mrs. Perez, are you okay with those amendments? Okay. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, it's Mr. Ramadan and Ms. Diaz.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, any other questions?
No, we'll definitely have this ready for further discussion once we get a little more time.
Yeah, it's definitely a big decision. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Iza,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Okay, moving on. Any new or old business? Do we have a motion to open up the public portion to hear citizens who wish to address the Board of Education.
Moved.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Mr. Ramadan and Mr. Martinez. Roll call, please.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
and Mr. Guzman.
Yes. I see an iPhone SMIT has their hand raised. If that person wishes to address the Board of Education, just please identify yourself. You may also use the chat option as well. I have a message here saying that you guys are doing a great job. So thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. We're just trying to do the best we can during these tough times. Any other questions? Any other comments, concerns from the community? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion to close?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Mr. Ramadan and Ms. Diaz. And roll call.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Fisher, second by Ms. Diaz. And roll call.
Ms. Diaz,
Yes.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Isa,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
Mrs. Perez,
Yes.
Mr. Ramadan,
Yes.
Mr. Guzman.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Have a safe night. And
Good
take
night.
care.